Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Robert Wedderburn podcast. Today I am talking to a talented and knowledgeable biologist and wildlife filmmaker from Sweden, Jonas Stenstrom.
Wow, this is awesome. I'm finally get a chance to chat with you, man.
If you could just tell us a bit about how you started as a wildlife filmmaker and what were your influences?
Yeah, so I think for me, I've been a little bit fortunate, I guess, growing up because I was growing up in a family and an environment that kind of encouraged outdoor activities. So I was, in a pretty safe neighborhood area where I could play outside all the time. And my family has always been interested in nature stuff. On my dad's side, my dad was a biologist. My grandfather was a doctor. Many of my relatives are working in science and biology somehow. So I was kind of growing up in that environment. And that was kind of the initial inspiration. I think the passion lies in just wildlife. And I think storytelling has always been kind of a part of me, but my background is essentially as a biologist, started out in biology. But in the back of my head, I've always had this kind of passion to share knowledge and to photography has also kind of been part of my life as I was studying and growing up as well. I was always carrying a camera. Still photo was probably what I was doing most of the time when I was growing up. And I remember I was writing down like one of those, when you're a kid and you write down what's your what would be a dream job as when you grow up. And I remember I have it in several places that I wanted to be a photographer for National Geographic. It was just that. It was just in the back of my head all the time. But then I started pursuing a degree in biology. So that's where everything started. I left Sweden, went to undergrad in Australia, studied marine biology, marine science. And even before that, I traveled quite a lot. So I know it's like a luxury in a way. I've been really fortunate to be able to do that growing up and seeing different cultures, different, natural environments, but also different people, meeting people and just hearing their stories is always kind of, it's been really important to me to understand that, everything's kind of connected. So having that fortunate upbringing of being able to see that already early in life was really important for me. And that led me to pursuing a degree in marine biology in Australia. So it was kind of an easy choice, an easy step for me to kind of find my way outside of my home country and see something new as early in life kind of thing when I kind of make my own decisions and stuff. And that also opened up a whole new world of opportunities in the sense that, I get to meet all these new cool people that are studying similar things to me, but they're coming from all over the world with all these different inputs and sharing their stories and just opening up and like creating this network of people to be able to, that they're basically sharing your passion for wildlife. And all of a sudden you're just immersed in this world that is just giving you so many options. And I met several people there that were just as interested in storytelling as me. And we started planning these adventures and stuff that we wanted to do later in life. And it led me to some amazing experiences. I should also say that coming back to Sweden, bringing back all these stories that I had in Australia, I started working with education in different ways, teaching adult classes in marine science. I was a substitute teacher in schools. And I just saw this need for a lot of these students to kind of, get real life examples of what they were studying. Here they are, especially when you're looking at the next generation, middle school and elementary school, and they're sitting with a textbook, but it was just like they were just regurgitating this information that they had in text in front of them. And I was like, man, this is so much more to this. Like I've seen it, go to a coral reef and it's like, this is like, it's not just that. It's like this whole environment of life. And it's just like all these interactions and stuff. There's so many side stories. So it grew this interest in like gathering all these visual examples and bringing it back to the classroom and just sharing these stories with all these students and just also kind of seeing how they changed as well, having a real life example to what they were reading in the books, like they knew me and they knew I had experienced these things. So that made that connection even more real. And it just seeing this change was just so kind of powerful, I guess. And that later led to just like, I want to continue as I can continue down the path of just doing my own research, which I do respect. I have so many friends that are amazing scientists that are doing very specific research, and I respect that a lot. But for me, it was like, I want to find this way of bridging the gap between that world, the science world, and the public, like bringing those two worlds together. And I think today that's even more important than ever. Just there's a disconnect between people and nature, and also the science and nature. Science and the public.
I think one of the things that I've noticed the most about interviewing quite a few biologists and people that are science orientated is that they are quite set in their ways, like a lot of people, and it's very hard for them to bridge that gap. So I think what you're doing is quite important. And it's not just important for the public, it's important for the science people to get involved and maybe have an easier way to reach the public. What do you think?
Well, I mean, yeah, I totally agree. And I feel you are a scientist, you shouldn't necessarily have to be a communicator. I mean, it's great if you are, but you have your job of doing the science. It would be amazing if you can also spend time doing the communication. But I think teaming up, I mean, I wanted to kind of give them a chance to do their research and I would help them with the communication, or we would help them with the communication. And I understand that there is a limited time for someone who is in the field or in the lab and actually spend a lot of time with communication. I think that's kind of it's sometimes forgotten that it is a lot of work. and I mean, as a scientist, you get grants to perform certain tasks and do the research. And I think as much as many of the people that I know would like to also get into to communicating their science more, there's just a very limited time. And I think I just had my interests in nature went from like broad and the normal route when you go into science is that you narrow that down into one field that you want to continue studying. For me, it went the other way. I started broad and went even wider. And it was just so amazing to find and talk to all these people that are all in these different fields of research and science. And then realizing that, so little of that information actually reaches the public. And I wanted to like diversify that, just bring it out in a as much as possible of that research, and like having it, these are real people. They're doing awesome work. And it's just like, it's not just what you see in the news. Like what you see in the news is it's just compressed and condensed into a news format. Here, like the personalities and the passion and the wide variety of interests is just like so much. That makes sense. Yeah. But we also started doing workshops for scientists on filmmaking, photography, and communication. So also helping them take the tools that they have available and creating a little bit more of a public space, like because a lot of times, someone like a science filmmaker can't be there all the time and documenting everything that happens. As much as I wish I could be in the field with every scientist that I like to work with, it's just not possible. So we started doing workshops as well. My colleague and I, teaching scientists on how to use basic tools, basic cameras, and also how to present that. Because every scientist, when they come up with something really cool, is probably going to be approached by, some news crew or even film crew, and it's just great to kind of have like the little bit of a toolkit to pull out on how to communicate what you've done in a way that the public can understand it.
Do you feel that scientists tend to hold on a lot to the research that they're doing? Because obviously that would make it quite hard for you to put it out there and to make it easy for the public to see what they're busy working on, because there might be that competition with other people that are working on similar projects.
I feel this changed quite a bit. I feel nowadays with social media and all these open platforms, it has become more and more open and available. I think what you mean is that they want to hold on to their research so that no other researchers are stealing their results and stuff like
exactly.
that, right? But I don't feel it's. I feel the traditional route for a scientist has always been to publish things in scientific journals, which I think is a little outdated, because it ends up being a system where you communicate with like-minded scientists only. And I feel that there's a need to get that information out to the public more, to be able to create change. Clearly, there's value in talking to other scientists and creating a science environment. But you got to break out of that circle of people that are already working in the field and actually reaching the general audience to be able to make create a public interest in something and create change within the general public, the general population, I think. So if we're talking about big topics like biodiversity and climate and that kind of stuff, I think it's just really important to give it a face, to give it a meaning, put it into a context, because what's coming out in the news tends to be a lot of doom and gloom. And I think that there shouldn't just all be negative stuff. There's a lot of positives to this as well. And also just explaining how the science is actually being conducted. So I think that creates a better understanding of where the results come from. So I do think that especially a lot of the next generation scientists, the people that are active now, are kind of grabbing onto this now and like showing more of what they're actually doing. and I think that's really valuable and not holding on to it so tightly. Because I think it's just valuable to be able to understand that where the results are actually from, That makes sense.
What would be some quick tips for any scientist that is a bit scared or worried about putting themselves out there on YouTube? What would be the advice that you would give to them to go about creating a project or creating something that could be viewed by the world to help them and their research?
When I say we, I mostly talk about me and my closest colleague, Rob Nelson, who's running a YouTube channel that I help with as well. We've been doing a lot of YouTube stuff together over the years. And he's based in the US and I'm in Europe. So we split up a little bit just so that we could make day-to-day decisions a little easier. But we have worked with a lot of scientists that okay, so how do I rephrase this? Just taking a topic, translating into a way that the public can sort of take that information in, and creating a little bit of a media buzz around a new discovery, for example, and then see how that has been spun and how much that has then also generated like ripple effects. It's kind of amazing, because when you put your media out there, I don't know how many times I've seen how much more that has had an effect on the actual scientific project. Like, for example, I was doing, let's just take this as an example. This is like probably 10 years ago. I was working with a scientist or a group of scientists, one being kind of a very, very kind of old school scientist initially, who was working on marine coastal environments. And I was there to document part of that work, to be able to create a little bit of a story around this work. And I know initially he was very much like, all right, so we're here now to do the science. We can't take time off of the actual scientific work to film. Like, you do what you can on the side, but I can't give you any time. But that ended up being a short video that ended up being pretty darn successful when it came to like shining light on these marine environments that they were working on. That completely changed his perspective on the value of media in the scientific research package, So he then went from being science first, media not so important, to then go every following project, trying to budget in a filmmaking and communication segment or part of the next kind of the following scientific projects that he was working on. And it turned out to be really successful because like it gave these like spin-off effects on the research, and it started getting noticed by other research programs, started getting noticed by the news, and then spread to an even bigger audience, like a bigger general public. And it was just gaining this public interest in protecting these coastal environments, which was amazing. So I think many of the researchers that we have worked with have kind of quickly discovered the value of kind of incorporating a communication or media component into the actual research, and understanding that that's actually not just bringing the science out, which is essentially why they're doing the research to begin with, but also helping them gain more interest in future projects that they're working on. Some have even been picked up by major networks and all that stuff. So it's I don't know if that answers the question, but I think that related to what you asked there about like the scientists that are willing to, I guess, open up a little bit and like understand that there's some really cool stuff that we're working on. We should try and put a little media spin on it as well. They tend to often realize quite soon that it's actually of great value, and not just taking time away from the actual research. It actually brings more value to the research results. And I think that has changed also a lot now, because I see now in a lot of the research grants that a lot of researchers that I work with, a lot of research grants that they're applying for actually even request a communication and documentation, like part of it needs to be documented.
I think also if you have a look at social media and stuff, a lot of the careers that people want to get into now are influenced quite heavily by what they see on their social media feed. So if you are a scientist and you would like there to be more scientists, or you care about the environment and you would like there to be more people that care about the environment, you have to put yourself out there.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, looking back one generation or two generations, we ended up having, linear TV, and we watched the documentaries that we saw online. Things are different now, and everyone knows that. And there's clearly a massive amount of media that everyone's consuming, some not so valuable and not so good, and some that probably has a lot of value but doesn't get the views. So there's always this battle between like what to create and how to get it out there, of course. But I do think that there's a huge value in quality content that actually has an educational purpose, especially when it comes to to understanding the natural world. We see a growing disconnect between people and the natural environment. Spending less time outside, especially spending less time out in let's call it the wild. We spend time in playgrounds and backyards, but going out and just exploring and foraging in the forest is that connection has not been broken, but it's gone down, at least, which I think is a little bit sad. I mean, knowledge creates an interest, or and vice versa as well. Interest creates knowledge, and I don't know. We like the idea of just having the chance to help people kind of reconnect with the natural world, and it shouldn't have to sound like hippie stuff. It's more about that connection, making the connection, understanding that we can't live without it. We got to be outside and do things, and we're so dependent on it. But it's not just that we're dependent on it for products and food. It's just I don't know. It's just clear, simple mental health as well, and just be outside.
I think one of the funniest things when it comes to that disconnect with nature is that now there's this whole barefoot movement, and this movement to get outside and be grounded and just walk around barefoot. Whereas maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that would have just been considered walking.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I have 2 kids myself, and it's sometimes, even though we're a family that likes to do things outside, it's always, it's a battle sometimes, to be able to go out. Like right now we have mushroom season kind of starting here in Sweden now, and go out and pick chanterelles and stuff, and trying to get the kids involved in that as well. And it's a little bit of a battle initially, but once you get out and they start finding things and understanding some connections, man, they're all over it. They just love it. But getting out the door is the initial battle, and I think that's pretty representative for a general public and as a whole as well. But back to the filmmaking, I think just that we have this chance of putting out information and content that has a purpose, I think. But then the battle is always, how do we do that in a way that it doesn't get sucked into this world of media that we're all, there's a lot of sensationalism, and there's a lot of other things that could be more easily consumed, I guess, than so we have to comply with new times, new rules, and new platforms, and finding ways to incorporate that into what's available and what's interesting right now. And again, like when we grew up, it was streamlined TV and nature documentaries, and you had to set the timetable, or you had to check the timetable for what was screening on TV. And now it's just like you pick and choose what you want, and learning about nature might not be the first thing on your list if you're 15 and you want to watch something. But I still think it's hugely important, and trying to find ways to do that.
Was there a particular animal or species that you found at a young age incredible? Or what was the species of animal that really got you interested in nature? Or was there one? Or was it just nature in general?
Good question. When I was a kid, you're thinking, initially?
Because for me, it was definitely snakes. It was very easy for me. For some strange reason, that was what I gravitated towards. What are your favorite animals now? Maybe what were your favorite animals when you were a kid?
Well, it's interesting because I mean, looking at it from like graduating high school and then deciding that I wanted to study marine biology. Every marine biology student wants to work with large marine mammals or sharks. It's just you can't get away from it. I loved it. But then I remember specifically like getting into studying marine science, and after a year, I went from focusing on large marine mammals, which I still love, of course. But then understanding that it was the little critters that were so freaking awesome as well. Like the little, there's just so many little, I don't know, I was studying around the coral reefs, and like in between all of the corals, you have all these little crabs, and even smaller than that, it was like little plankton that looked amazing, that were like creating the baseline of all these food webs. And it was fun to see how knowledge could bring me down to a level that I didn't think I was going to be interested in when I started. But if I was to pick one animal that has always been with me as one of my top 5, it would be manta rays, for example. So manta rays for me were, I think, since an early age, a symbol of kind of these majestic, big majestic animals that it almost looked alien, and they moved so gracefully in the water. Yet they were huge and completely harmless, and they feed on the tiniest organisms in the open water. And it's like experiencing that for the first time was like magical to me. It was amazing. So that has always been a little bit of a iconic animal that's always been with me. But it's funny because like when I started traveling, I booked a ticket, and the second thing I did was to get a hold of a bunch of field guides, and like, what kind of animals could I possibly see in these areas that I'm going to visit? And then I started even ranking things in like, what are the animals that I will most likely see? And what are my like golden tickets if I'm super, super lucky? So I was like, I almost made a list of things that I want to photograph. And like, these are the things I'm pretty sure I'm going to get pictures of, and I'll learn things about those animals. And like, I'm trying to understand where they live, how they live. And if I'm filming, it will, I know kind of what behaviors and stuff to look for, and also what behaviors to search for to maximize my chances of finding them. But then I had all these like list of animals that I going to, say, South America, everyone wants to see a jaguar, but the chances of seeing it are not going to be great. But if you started studying the books first, and you know roughly where they will be and how they live, like you're like switching on a different kind of lens in your head, and you know where to search, where to scout to maximize your chances of finding these animals. So I think I had favorite animals in every continent or every place that I wanted to go to. I had like a little bit of a bucket list ranking of things that I wanted to see. But I did, first time I went to Africa, I went to Kenya when I was 15, and it was an eye-opening trip I did with my dad. Went to the Masai Mara and spent time on the savannah, and it was like it just triggered something it stayed with me since then. So the big animals on the savannah, seeing the lions, seeing the cheetahs, those were always big favorites, because they something happened on that trip that just like triggered me in a way. So yeah, I don't remember having like one favorite animal growing up. It were too many. I was sitting reading my dad's nature books. He had this whole stack of books that I was just like flipping through growing up, and I was like, that I want to see. Oh, that I want to see. That I want to see. And it's funny too, that has stayed with me since then, because I got talked to, again, my colleague Rob Nelson, and he always jokes and makes fun of me for having a bucket list, a species bucket list that is just never ending. That is just a list of animals that just keeps growing. I don't have just like one or two. It's just Every time you learn about a new animal, is included in the species bucket list.
I think I'm exactly the same. Whenever I go to a new national park or somewhere where I've never been before, I have a big list and I write it down, and I'll put it on my phone, and I know exactly what I want to see, and I plan my hardest to find it, and I'll go onto iNaturalist and I'll see where I'm most likely to find that species. And I always find that the species that I really am excited to look for, when I find them, they're exciting, but always there's something that I learn along the way. There's always another species. And I think for me, that's also really interesting. And then I'll just go down the rabbit hole, and I'll be studying about something that I had no idea even existed there. And then I'll end up, and then that'll be on my bucket list. That'll be my main priority when I get there. And it will be completely different to maybe what I expected. Would be the interesting animal or the interesting thing when I get there.
I find there's that happens to a lot of people when they start when they start that it just is the same. It's like a reflex. It's just but there's just so much to I don't know. There's just so much to see. Like every new environment has something really cool with it, and it's just I don't know. Just I feel we're about the same there, because I'm planning I'm going to Africa again and to Tanzania in about a month, and I've already started going through the parks and the things that I'm hopefully going to be able to get pictures of.
Where are you going to go in Tanzania?
It's not going to be a long trip. There's only about a week, but we're hoping to hit the big migration crossing the Mara River. And for those who don't know what that is, it's a migration of mainly wildebeest that then also brings a lot of animals with it. And that is something that it was just funny, because that actually happened when I was in Kenya. When I was 15, but I had no idea that was a thing. And so I've been wanting to go back now with the knowledge that I have now and the understanding of what that migration actually is and means, and see it again. So that's what we're doing.
You've been on YouTube for many years now. Do you feel that it's helped your career? And how do you balance the YouTube world with the real world, or the YouTube world with filming other projects that maybe are more suited to or more tailored to what you like to film, but maybe aren't as popular?
Yeah, it's a good question. YouTube it's interesting. I have no simple answer to that. I think it brings a lot of freedom to it, because you choose your topics, but you also have to tailor your content to your audience, I guess. I think what a lot of people see when they watch YouTube is, they see the result of the work, but there's a lot of work behind it that people don't forget, tend to forget. And I think it does take a lot of thought, and does take a lot of time to build that up, and consistency as well. So I am in the middle. Where we spend a lot of time on YouTube over the years, and successfully at times. But it's like a roller coaster. It goes up and down, and at times it's hugely beneficial. But when I talk to the younger generation about it, a lot of people now want to be YouTubers, and I say, it's going to take a lot of work. And will I encourage it? Well, sometimes, but I also understand that I've also seen a lot of people not succeeding, but I've seen a lot of people succeed as well. So there's that. If you let it get to you and like burn you, because you will be exposed to the world in a quite harsh way, it's you got to be prepared for that. And it does have the benefit of you being able to choose your topics, which is fun. So if you see it that way, like you're telling the story, things that you find interesting, that's going to be great. But you might not be lucky in picking the topics that everyone else want to watch right away. So I think it's that important balance of knowing yourself and how will you react if you don't get a lot of views initially, and spending the time to build up your channel and spending time to build up your presence, and hopefully that will lead to something later. But the thought that it's going to happen overnight as soon as you initiate a YouTube channel is something that I'm just it's important to tell people that it's very unlikely that, you know, you're going to upload a video and that's going to go viral and everyone's going to see it and all of a sudden you're going to be a YouTube star. I think it's really important to talk about this as a you know, because it's usually not that. It's not going to go that fast. It does take a lot of work. It's like building up your cred in any occupation. I guess you gotta work that up. But all of a sudden, your cred here is also your presence and your face. So it's very much you that will take the hit either way. You know. I would encourage a lot of people to use it as a platform for exposure, more as a, you know, marketing and testing things out initially, and then seeing how things work, but thinking that you're going to go from zero to financially, you know, being rich right away through uploading things on YouTube. You got to be a little bit more realistic than that, and understanding that it's not going to happen overnight. So, I don't know. I'm torn in that sense because I don't like encourage too many of my, you know. I have a daughter who's 10, and I know a lot of people that are a few years older that I really want to get into YouTube, and I'm just trying to tell them, just think about it. We've been on YouTube for a long time, and I know the environment. And I don't want to talk it down, but just be careful as well. Like it's I think it's the same thing with social media in general. Like you don't want to go down the rabbit hole of thinking that you're a bad person if you don't get the views that you were hoping for. Having fun with it first, I think, is really important, and playing with it for yourself rather than thinking that you're going to be rich right away. As a filmmaker, I also see, you know, having a media presence is also very important to be able to be seen and to be able to share your I mean, you have this amazing ability to share your work and your passion to an incredible audience. There's no other platform where you can do that, really. So it's amazing in that sense as well.
I think it's just a platform. There's really nothing to it. And it's the same idea that, you know, books have been around for centuries, and no one goes out and thinks, I'm going to be rich if I write a book. I'm going to write this one book and my whole life is going to change. But for some reason, we feel the same way. We feel that way about social media and about YouTubing, and it's really just an encyclopedia where people can look up stuff. So if you're providing information and there's something that you want to share, then by all means share it. But this whole idea that you're going to be successful because you're a YouTuber, I don't think that that's the main part of it. I think that you have to do all the other stuff. Just like before, when the medium was a painting or a book, you also had to do the other work as well. It's not just the YouTube. It's just a tool.
I agree. And also, it's a question of how you define success also, I guess, to a point. For me, it's really great to be able to share the stories and I can't say that, I'm doing it for the money so much. It's more just finding a way to, like an outlet. It's a platform, like you said, it's an outlet for that information. And I think we've talked about things a lot in the past, me and my colleagues, about this, like, what is success in a video? Is it that you have a certain number of views, or is it that the right people see the results? So it's like you can have 100 people watch a video, but they're really great. They're people that have the capacity to make a difference as well, and they get affected by your video, and you can make real impact. Or you can have 1 million people watching the video, but which is awesome, of course, but you still, you might not have that same impact. It's dependent on a lot of factors as well. So number of views is of course important in your personal monetization if you want to make it into a money machine in a way, but impact could be measured differently.
And also, just because you've created a lot of views and a lot of people have watched that particular video, it doesn't mean that they've changed their way of thinking. They might just carry on and with their lives, and you haven't affected the world in any way positively.
No, correct. I mean, that's the thing. And it's important to take it back to why you're doing this in the first place. If you, I sometimes get a little bit discouraged by the fact that, we talked about this before, like one video needs to be topped by the next, and you're just amping things up. And one challenge needs to be topped by another challenge, and something needs to be going more and more extreme. And I wonder sometimes. I mean, it's fun. I get sucked into these things as well. I mean, I watch it, but then after a while, I'm like, what did I just watch? How did this change me? And I think sometimes you just got to take a step back and reconsider your purpose initially. Like, what was your initial thought when you got into this? Like, what were you trying to do? And I think it's not about upping the challenges all the time. It's about sharing a passion, I guess.
How do you balance education in your videos with entertainment? I
want there to be a take-home message of some sort, but I also understand, we're all impatient when it comes to videos these days. We can't sit and watch for too long. So there's a bunch of formulas to kind of adhere to when it comes to setting up a video and maintaining interest and pace. But it also depends on your audience. But I like to keep things genuine, just keep it light. I think there's one formula for really hard topics that I don't know, there are many things that are happening around the world that are not so positive, but some videos are definitely showing that in a way that is doesn't really bring you up, and maybe some topics are not supposed to bring you up. But I like the idea of having a little bit more of a positive spin. Even if you're showing something negative is happening, there needs to be some sort of like, we need to come out of it thinking a little bit that there's still a bunch of things we can do to make things better. So keeping it light, I think, is important, and showing possible options. But then, if you look at formats for how videos are made, there's like you can't even count how many different styles that you can go about doing things. Slow pace, high pace, fast editing, jump cuts, especially when it comes to YouTube, there's like all these different styles that people follow. But there are certain guidelines or certain kind of things that the algorithm will pick up if you want to pursue an online YouTube platform. And one thing that we have talked a lot about in the past that is different from what it used to be is YouTube kind of always starts with a hook. You start with the best clip. In the old days, you used to end with the best clip. That's what you were working up towards. Now you're starting with the best, and then you explain what the best was all about. And that is one thing that has changed filmmaking, I think, since YouTube kind of came in and became such a major platform for uploading content. But I and it's also clearly it's a shorter format. There's a big kill your darlings. That expression has been used a lot in all kinds of different scenarios. But when it comes to filmmaking, it's definitely important if you're using, for example, YouTube as a platform. You might be so attached to a lot of the stuff that you shot, and say if you interviewed an expert, they might be super attached to their research, but you're not going to be able to show all of that. It's just not going to work. So you need to compress it into what you think an audience will be interested in. Rather than like, oh my God, that guy said so many cool things for 35 minutes. Well, then you got to preface it. This is a 35-minute interview. Like this podcast is more a podcast. But if you're planning on talking about a specific topic, there's a lot of killing your darlings. You got to compress things a lot, or you won't have the retention or the audience attention for very much. I think I always ask a client or someone I'm working with, like there's a couple of questions that I always bring up first. One, what's the target audience? Who's going to be watching this? And then the follow-up question to that is, why is they going to be watching this? What's the purpose? Why are they going to take 5-10 minutes out of their time to watch this particular video and not everything else that is out there instead? So is there a purpose for them to stay on the video, and how can we make that happen? So, and that can change. That can be so varying. Like, are we talking to policymakers? Are we talking to the people, the politicians that might not be interested in the fast cuts that a 20-year-old is? Then we might have to address the film that way. Like, are we trying to make this an impactful film for I don't know, the people that are making decisions about land conservation? Well, they might listen more if we do it a different way. If we're doing it sensationalized, super fast whoop, whoop, whoop video kind of stuff that would go viral on YouTube, then they might not take it seriously. So it's like it's all that bouncing back and forth. It depends on who's going to be watching it and why.
That's why I like to think of YouTube often as an encyclopedia where people can go and look up stuff, because you don't know who's going to be watching it. So as you say, if there's policymakers that are watching the content and their reference is something like Mr. Beast, well, then it's definitely going to affect their decisions. So there is somewhat of a responsibility for scientists and for wildlife filmmakers to put their content that might not be so interesting or might not be clickbait up there on the internet.
Absolutely. I mean, we've done a bunch of campaign style videos, I guess. Especially when we do work with scientists, they have a purpose. They have a plan with the videos that they want to take it on a tour, rather than having it uploaded necessarily. We might upload it as well to create like a platform or like a campaign online, right? But they're also using the videos in a tour setting where they actually physically go out and try to make impact face to face, and they're using the videos to elevate that, that's a springboard, because it's the power of media is that you get to visualize something that you might not know about, or you might not be able to see yourself. So we have this chance of, like, you're talking about the rainforest. A huge majority of the people haven't been to the rainforest. They've seen what they've seen on the news, but they haven't been there and seeing it in real life. And now we can use this media to actually show, give an experience and show what it's like, and use that as a springboard to make a difference. So I think we've worked with forestry, we worked with invasive species, we worked with biodiversity topics and stuff, and a lot of people use this to help visualize a point that they're trying to make, to policymakers or anyone else who's working in the industry, and that's a lot of times parallel to uploading it. So that's just two different uses of the same kind of video. Like, it's uploaded, might have a certain number of views, but it's also used in a face-to-face discussion about making a difference.
Are there any present projects that you are working on that you would like to talk about?
So the fun kind of cool projects that I'm doing now are related to bucket list species as well, always, and those species are linked to bucket list environments that I just love to shine light on. The one that I'm currently working on a lot is something that, if someone has followed me over the years, I don't know, I've mentioned it and talked about it a lot, but it is, I've never been able to put something out because we haven't succeeded in what we're trying to do. And that is talking about the Swedish population of muskox. There's only, as far as we know right now, 7 individuals in the whole country. This is a large animal, and somehow there's only 7 individuals. And this is a longer story and a longer discussion about that, but it's, I just found it so fascinating already 10 years ago that we have these super kind of ancient animals that have been around for millions of years, looking about the same as they do today, and we have this population of less than 10 animals, and for some reason they're still hanging around, and it's just so cool. So that's one of the projects now. I'm involved with scientists and different organizations, zoos actually, that are doing research on these animals and trying to figure out their role in the ecosystem. So I'm documenting that. And that's one. And also another project that I found really interesting locally here, where I am in Sweden now, is that they've just reintroduced sturgeon, Atlantic sturgeon, into the waters of Sweden for the first time in over 100 years. It hasn't been swimming in Swedish waters for over 100 years, and now we have a bunch of them swimming in one of the rivers here outside of where I live, because they're trying to, they've done this massive background study and figured out exactly what species and where they used to be, and now trying to reintroduce this fish that can grow up to over 4 meters long into our waters, which is amazing. So it's super cool too. Also just a fun passion project. But I have another bunch of similar things that I'm also kind of working on as well, parallel to all of this. And I think everything goes back to, like I said before, shining light on cool species and why they're important and how they interact with the environment. And I have a bunch of places around Europe that I have on a list that I'm trying to create a European project on. So if anyone is interested in hearing more about that, they should just get in contact. I think it would be a really cool project that I'm trying to get funded and trying to get off the ground. That would put biodiversity in Europe on the map, I think, in a different way. So that's what I'm trying to kind of get going as well.
It sounds like a perfect excuse or a perfect reason to go out and find all your bucket list species.
Very much so. Yeah. Very much. Yeah.
You seem to be a very sporty and adventurous person. How do you feel that your adventures and your sporting mentality have helped you when you're out in the field filming wildlife?
Oh, tremendously. And I think part of my mentality is part of the wildlife, and it is connected to health and fitness, I think, too. At least for me, I feel. I like to be active. I've always said that I feel the best when I'm in a slight misery state. And it's like when you're in those moments of like, you're cold, you're wet, you're outside, or you've been hiking for hours, which requires some, basic stamina and fitness. Then you feel the most alive. And I feel there's such a connection between sports and or at least being fit a little bit and being out and just like experiencing things. It's just, I don't know. I don't explain it, but it's very important to me. I do love to try out new things and challenge myself. And I think those are really, really connected. So the challenge is, I don't know, it's just fun. If you can combine the physical challenge with the natural challenge, it's like the ultimate, rush,
I think a lot of the places that wildlife filmmakers have to visit aren't so easy to access or quite remote. And I know that in films we try to show that, but it's often very hard to feel that feeling of how much effort and how much work goes into a wildlife shot. Sometimes you can be working on something for a few weeks, and it can be extremely painful and uncomfortable, and you get a shot, and then you might not even remember it yourself, or you see that it's beautiful. Yeah,
no doubt. I got to be honest, it's not necessarily very glamorous work or kind of work. There's a lot of hard work behind it, and you often end up sleeping in really weird places. You will have to do things to get to a location that is gonna require you to have some fitness. And we've had to lower ourselves. Like in the last couple of years, we were shooting some just a few clips in the US on banding peregrine falcons, and they nest on like vertical cliff faces, like it's a 200-meter cliff face, and you got to get down there to actually band them to put little numbers around their legs, right? And to be able to document that, you got to be able to. It's challenging, and there's a bunch of those examples. In the water, if you do any aquatic stuff, that dive gear and dive experience is crucial. And you want to be able to control what you do, how you do it, and then not put yourself in any risk. And I've been to places where the camera person can't be the one who is limiting the whole project, So I've been to places where that has happened, and it is not great. There are going to be shoots where you come in with a bunch of gear and you know exactly what to set up, and you have a huge crew and everyone sets up, and sure, but most of the stuff that I've been part of doing has been a small crew, run and gun. You're carrying your own stuff, and you will be out. And you'll just have to survive your stuff. You have to bring home what you can, and you have to carry your stuff out yourself. And so you can make that connection that it needs to be a little bit fit. But I also feel that it's just, I don't know. Sports and challenge has always been a part of me, and I just like combining it with my other nature interests. And I think in the past also, we tend to work in because there were so many interesting things that we wanted to do, that we try to even write certain scripts so that we could work in the new sports and the new challenges that we always wanted to try out, so that, this is something that I've been wanting to do anyway. How can I work that into a story so I get a chance to do it, whether it be hang gliding or skydiving or diving or whatever. And it's always been fun.
So, for example, you incorporate skydiving into viewing Wildebeest, two things that are completely disconnected.
Exactly. Well, we did. We go back 15 years. We did a series, or 12 years. We did a series of educational videos for schools. And there were some stories that like, for example, talking about we did one elementary school video on gravitation, and we were like, why don't we just do this falling out of an airplane? We might as well, because it works well. And then that's more of a physics video. But we did another one on how we talked about the Hawaiian Islands, and how things established on these really remote islands, being considered some of the most remote islands in the world, because if you look at distance to the mainland in every direction, and how did they become so diverse as they are today in terms of species? How did things get out there? Because they're fairly recently formed volcanic islands. So we talked about, different ways of how things got to the islands, and one of them being transported by winds and flying animals. So that's, sounds a little bit far-fetched now when I say it, but we were like, why don't we learn how to skydive when we talk about it, and this way. So should say also that this was for middle school age kids. So it was a way to kind of connect things that they would find interesting to these kind of natural phenomena of how to establish new species on new land. But yeah, that was really fun. So yeah, you did a skydiving course just before that, and then we talked about it from the planes.
And you survived, and you were able to make the video, so it was worth it.
Oh no, yeah, totally worth it. Totally worth it. Yeah.
What would you consider your proudest moment as a wildlife filmmaker?
That's a hard question for me. It shouldn't be hard, but I don't like to. Honestly, I don't like to brag. I don't. It's I felt proud a lot of times when you get compliments on things that you've done well, and people have said this actually helped make a difference. Those are the times when I definitely feel the proudest. Doesn't have to do anything about money or anything like that. It's just, I just like when people genuinely say that, this actually helped me somehow. People like awards and whatever, film festivals and that kind of stuff. But it's at the end of the day, it's always, when someone has felt that they've changed, that, they made some kind of an impact on them personally, I think. Or help them make a difference to someone else, like a teacher who's like, guys, this was great. I've been able to work this into my classroom, and then I've actually had a couple of students that I've met later in life that have decided to do to do something related to wildlife and conservation as a result of watching the videos. And I guess those are by far super proud moments. Like some of the most, the times when I feel the proudest. Yeah. What
advice would you give to wildlife filmmakers that are looking to do similar work to the work that you're doing?
Don't be afraid of contacting people face to face. If there's something you feel passionate about, find the people that are working with it, look them up and get in contact. And I think if I'm talking to someone who's new in the industry, you're going to have to probably prove yourself a little bit first and not go in and demand a bunch of money, which is both good and bad, I guess. But working up healthy, long-lasting relationships with people that you like to work with are for me super valuable.
Do you think that camera gear is important to the work that you do? You do a lot of different styles of filmmaking. You've even got a qualification in drone filmmaking.
Yeah. I think gear is a question that comes up all the time. We end up getting so many questions about like, what camera should I buy? What blah, 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 and my boring first answer is always use what you have. And then learn what kind of limitations that gear has. And then you understand what you should upgrade to. So with, today, everyone knows this. Everyone's walking around with a high-res camera in their phone. They can do a lot with that. But I think clearly people have been hugely successful, way more than I have, just using those simple phones and cameras. I mean, if you look at, social media and stuff, so you can definitely do so much with that. You don't need to have a super expensive camera, but again, it depends on who you want to work for and what you want to do. I very rarely work with the big cinema cameras, but I have a cinema camera, video camera that is small that I can run with, that I can carry in my hand and I can walk. So I don't mind carrying my camera for 2 hours out on the mountain. I can do that, but I couldn't do that with the cameras that are used to shoot, for example, the big blue chip films on BBC or National Geographic. I don't know. It's just they're heavy, but they shoot great stuff. So I think gear is always that question that comes back to one being, what do you want to do? And two, what are your limitations? Like, what else do you need to do? So I think today with the mirrorless small cameras, you can do so much. They are a little bit pricey for someone who's just starting in the industry. So why don't you just go down a step and start with something cheaper first? And then, but a recommendation, if you're a complete beginner, something that you can record audio with that is not built into the camera is always good. Some sort of, at least a shotgun microphone to put on top. That's like, I always say, go with what you have, but get another microphone. That's always a good thing. And then work your way up from there. Like, I don't know, just one lens at a time, one camera model at a time, and they will always be outdated. So 3 years down the road, you'll have to upgrade anyway. So we shot a lot on GoPros. They're always great, and shot a lot with the phone. I know my colleague Rob, he's like always a big proponent for using the phone in many occasions, because like you can just whip it out and you have a clip, and it can be worked into a lot of videos. So any clip that you can get is better than no clip. But then if you have time to set up something, or you have a budget that will allow you to get a good camera, well, there is a reason why certain cameras are more expensive, for sure. So there's a reason why you can get a good cinema camera. But do you need it to start with? Not sure.
The analogy that I like to think of often is running. If you're going to be going and you're going to be doing a 5 kilometer race, you really don't need much. You probably don't even need shoes. But if you are going out and you're going to do the Appalachian Trail and you're going to be doing it for the next 3 months, you should probably take that into consideration and get all the necessary items that you might need. But with that being said, you're going to look quite silly if you arrive with the same gear at a 5 kilometer running race. And I don't know why with filmmaking, we don't feel the same way, that we always say, wow, the moment someone's got a bigger camera, but it might actually not be the right camera for the job.
No doubt. Yeah, you're right. And I mean, I've been shooting in places where we were running around with handheld cameras, and someone else was going with a bigger, heavy cinema camera. Took forever to set up. The shots that he got, amazing. the quantity of it, I mean, not even close to what we shot with the running cameras. But the shots were incredible, like worthy of any BBC production that you've ever seen. But we were getting more, but not as good with the handheld cameras. So it's definitely that balance. And I've been shooting myself. Like it's always that struggle. You how much stuff should I bring on a shoot? Like what lenses should I leave behind? Is it worth bringing everything that I have? Because I'm going to have to be carrying it. Am I going to use it all? Because you bring what you think you will need. Otherwise, you'll just be carrying unnecessary weight.
So in your backpack, what are the items that you will put into your backpack no matter what for any kind of wildlife film production or adventure that you go on?
Well, I'm shooting on a Canon Cinecamera, the smallest one that they have right now. And I need, you need lenses for it. I need at least one wide angle and one telephoto always. And I would like, depending on the project, but those are at least, I mean, that's my minimum, one telephoto lens and one wide angle at least. But then specialty stuff, you come into either getting a macro lens as well for getting like really tight stuff. But audio equipment, at least one set of external wireless microphones. I always bring a tripod. I know that's heavy and cumbersome, but I always need to bring my tripod. Slider, if I feel like I can carry it, because beautiful sliding shots mixed in is just, I don't know, it feels like it's upping the production value. But I have a little field slider that is only like a foot long, just because it's nice, and a couple of lights. And I now just like little brick lights, little battery powered that you can charge with a USB cord, are just doing so much, especially if you're in the forest, because it's like just lighting up a subject is gonna just, I don't know, it just ups the production quality a little bit, and it just feels more real. But then everything else is like there's. Oh yeah, and then a drone. So now with the abilities of shooting stuff with a drone, I cannot leave it behind because it needs to come with, because it's just, again, it's another level of production quality. But that comes with some requirements. Here in Sweden, you have to, I think most countries now, you have to have some sort of a license to fly. And also you need to know where you're not allowed to fly, because now they started fining people, giving you fines if you fly in areas that you're not supposed to fly in. So, but then everything else is a bonus. Now for the last trip, when I was filming out on the mountain a month ago, I ended up buying I wouldn't call it portable, but sort of portable solar panel and a off-grid battery that looks like it's about the size of a car battery, but a little bit lighter. But to be able to charge my batteries in the field, because I was going to be out for 4 days and there was no way to charge my batteries. So making sure that you have the ability to film everything that you need to film, meaning that you need to have memory cards that will allow you to film. Like I was out shooting the same location a couple of years ago, but I was holding back so much because we were looking for these specific animals. So I didn't shoot much on the first, pretty much the full day, which is unfortunate because I could have shot a lot, but I felt so limited by the amount of media that I could, like my memory cards. So I was waiting to holding off in case we were finding these animals. So that's another thing that, I think about. You got to make sure that you have enough space and battery. So now I don't know, I have this off-grid battery with a big 6-foot solar panel that I can bring out as well. And then clearly I won't be able to carry that if I go out in the field. So that's mostly if you're flying out with a helicopter or if you're driving out with a car. So, oh yeah, make sure that you have a comfortable camera bag that you can actually carry. That's like crucial. Needs to be comfortable.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to be limited by technology. And if you think about a painter that goes out to paint a landscape painting, he's obviously going to bring, or she's going to bring, the required amount of paint to fill the canvas. And it's so funny how we often limit ourselves with the technology. It's definitely got to do with the price. But I share a similar sentiment that I deliberately take twice as many batteries and twice as much memory space to do the job. And I'd far rather have extra batteries in my backpack, even though it's a lot heavier, than maybe bring an extra lens. I think that it always feels better during the filmmaking experience if you know that you're going to be able to last the shoot.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Is there a story or something special that you would like to film in the future?
I see this as a little bit of a personal journey as well. You know, my stories that I would like to shoot in the future are very much related to what I would love to see myself. So it's like a personal, I don't know, bucket list thing that I whether it be a country, an environment, or a species that I've always dreamt about seeing. You know, I would love to find a way to get down to Antarctica. That's always been really high on my list. But I've always said that I want to go down for a purpose. I don't just want to, pay for a ticket and go down. I want it to be I need for a mission that could have an impact, and that makes sense. Like I want to tell a story rather than help. I think there's a huge value in bringing tourists to a lot of these places as well, because the personal experience of seeing these will also help change, hopefully make an impact and change people's minds about these areas. But I've always wanted to do a project in the Southern Ocean and Antarctica for research or something similar. Yeah. So that's definitely on my big bucket list. But also around Nepal, about the big mountains around the Nepal area has always been something I've wanted to experience for sure. But there's so many. When I get that question, it's just so hard. My head starts spinning right away because I have so many places and so many wishes. There's just too much. I mean, we live in an amazing world, and there's just like it's so many places I would love to see. There's always that conflict, though. Like we talk about, you want to travel because that's not going to be the greatest thing for the planet either, if you just start shooting around the world and flying everywhere. And that's also true. So it's like you got to balance that. And that's the reason why I'm saying I want to do things for a purpose. I prefer to tie it with something that could have an impact.
Well, I think filming wildlife and traveling is obviously a good motive, or a better motive than maybe most travelers have. So that's also something to feel good about. I think that the reason why you might feel that way, the reason why we feel that way when we travel as wildlife filmmakers, is because we're conscious of it.
Yeah,
obviously, you're going to try and fly or get to your locations in the greenest way possible.
Yeah. When possible, definitely. It is always a challenge, of course. It is, and that question comes up a lot when people wonder how you justify one and the other. So
you have a lot of companies now that are trying to greenwash and create promotional videos so that it looks like they are doing conservation work. And my take on that is that if those videos or that content is being created, then there can be accountability. So you're going to have a lot of people that view those companies and their work, and they're going to ask questions. Whereas if that hasn't been created, there'll be little that will be asked of those companies or those entities.
I think there's a link here to, for example, like zoos and aquariums and stuff. There's been all this like talk lately about the purpose of having animals in captivity, and I feel when done right, it has a huge value. There's clearly going to be negative examples of this as well. And people doing it for the wrong purpose. But when done right with the right purpose, it has a huge value and chance of impact. So I think I'm hoping that by documenting a lot of these things, we will hopefully have a way or a chance to create those visual emotions that will help change things for the future. I'm hoping.
What advice would you give to other wildlife filmmakers who would like to pursue a similar career path to you?
My advice is be honest, contact the right people. Be prepared to understand that what you see on TV is not necessarily everything that this is. There's a lot of work behind this, is what I'm saying, that is going to be necessary. A lot of people want to be a host on TV and don't understand that there's a lot of work that goes into the whole production. And it's going to be a lot of stuff that you don't necessarily see. So I love being out in the field, but I also spend a lot of time on the computer, contacting people, writing stories, editing, all that stuff as well. So I think be honest, be passionate, get in contact with people, build up a network, work as a volunteer, get involved with wildlife film festivals. You can volunteer there as well, which is a great way to network. And just be humble, I think. Be humble to the whole everything about things. Just don't take things for granted. Just be humble. And also the other big advice that's so obvious is just go out and start doing it. Just go out and start shooting. You will only learn by doing this, and you will also only learn by making mistakes. So you need to make the mistakes, and you need to make the bad films to be able to do the good films. I would say, if you listen to pretty much all of the successful YouTubers, I can almost promise you that all of them had made a lot of really bad videos first. So I think just be really humble to that experience.
How can people get in contact with you or view your work on YouTube and on social media?
To get in contact with me, I guess searching for my name would probably bring it up. But I usually like the idea of posting stuff on Instagram. Instagram is more of an art page for me, like a little bit of a way to portray your still photography, I guess. And that's Behind the Science is my Instagram. YouTube wise, I'm still building up the new channel that I'm trying to profile, but I have a website called Eocene Productions. So Eocene-Productions is my website, and through there you can always get in contact with me.
Jonas, thank you very much for being on this episode.
Well, thank you so much, Robert. It's been a pleasure.
I hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode of the Robert Wedderburn podcast. If you would like to listen to more episodes, then follow me on Spotify, or if you're listening to this on YouTube, then don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next episode.